This is the start of a multiple-part series. These stories actually happened. Some friends and relatives know about one or two, but not all. They started when I was 20, and the latest a few days ago. I'll be 70 soon, and feel it is important to share them all. Perhaps they will touch someone positively along the way. All the best, folks. All the best. During my time at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, there was an abundance of troops. So many, in fact, that there was never a time when you were ever alone. We did not have to salute any officers traveling in a vehicle. Enlisted troops had red registration bumper stickers, and officer bumper stickers were blue. If the enlisted troops followed the normal protocol of saluting, you would never get to put your arm down. I mention this because the first experience I'm about to reveal took place in a totally isolated situation. About 2 or 3 weeks before I was to graduate and get my orders to Vietnam, I was on my free time. My friend Dame Bellis and I had planned that I would meet him at his barracks and we would go eat at the main post cafeteria for lunch. Each barracks held an entire company. They were 3-story brick buildings about 150 feet long. The company commander, first sergeant, and company clerk had offices on the first floor. There was also a day room that was like a lounge. It had a television and some games. The one I played often was foosball. This is also the location where I watched the moon landing. Out in front of the barracks was a full-length sidewalk wide enough to hold the entire company in formation. There were 2 sets of steps about a third of the way from each end of the building. On this particular day, to get to Dane's building, I had to navigate around the right side of the building, cross a footbridge that crossed a small stream, and then traverse a parking lot that was next to his barracks. When I turned the corner of the building, I saw a command sergeant major walking toward me. He motioned me to stop. He was a slightly built black man, about 5 foot and 7 inches tall. He said, "You know you are going to Vietnam." I replied that I did, as I had what was considered a critical MOS, military occupation skill, or something like that. He then proceeded to say that he had been sent to tell me how to survive in Vietnam. He pointed out a scarlet-colored presidential ribbon on his right chest. He told me that only 6 or 7 people had that ribbon. After 50 years, I'm not sure of the exact number. Next, he told me when on patrol, I should never volunteer to take point. Take point only if ordered. When on patrol, I should stay in the last third of the group and never lag behind. I told him I would remember and thanked him for his advice. Then we each started to go on our way. I had taken only 2 steps. There was a booming voice in my head that said, "Follow him." At that, I spun around, or was spun around. I could see 100 yards in all directions. There was no one in sight. I could see out to the street, and there were no cars. No people on the sidewalk coming out of any of the buildings. Combat Development Command was the next building in line with ours. No people visible. Not only did the command sergeant major disappear, but it seemed like time stopped. There was no one for at least 15 seconds. Then someone came out the far door and down the steps of my building, and then a car on the street, and then a few more. I had only taken 2 steps, and the command sergeant major had disappeared. That is when I realized I had just met my guardian angel, face to face. I never forgot his advice. I have followed it all the rest of my life. The first time was in Vietnam. My group was to go to the range and qualify with our M16s. We traveled over to the range in 2 5-quarter trucks. All of my work group, except for one guy named Bill, was on the truck with me. Bill was on the second truck. Both vehicles backed into the range area and parked about 15 yards apart. I was sitting next to the tailgate, but I let the other guys get out first. I had remembered my angel's advice. After I jumped out of the truck into the knee-high grass, I looked over at the other truck. As I did so, I saw Bill jump out. There was a loud explosion, and I saw Bill fly up in the air about 15 feet. He had jumped and landed on a booby trap. When the smoke cleared, I was the only one still standing. That was the strangest feeling I have ever had, before or since. The 5 guys between me and Bill all got shrapnel wounds. The first sergeant was okay, and he quickly put a tourniquet on Bill's leg. He had lost his lower leg. The company clerk got on the radio and called for a dust-off helicopter. The Huey was there in no time, and Bill was loaded and on his way to the Long Binh Hospital. Our lieutenant then ordered us to form up. About that time, the battalion commander pulled up in his Jeep. He got out and loudly wanted to know who was in charge of this cluster. I'll let you fill in the blank there. The lieutenant stepped up and saluted. The colonel then told us we were in a possible minefield, and from that point on, we were to step in each other's footprints and get back on the vehicles. In the movies, whenever troops are caught in a minefield, it had always been plowed and harrowed first. I always wondered about that. We were not in a freshly plowed and cleared field. We were in a hayfield and the grass was knee-high. It's a whole lot more difficult to follow someone else's steps in that situation. They later brought in a D7 and ran it around that area to clear it. We never did qualify with our M16s. During today's wars, a memorial service for casualties will have the person's extra pair of boots, rifle, and helmet configured in front of the company. In my organization, the person's boots were placed in formation where he normally stood. Bill normally stood next to me. I can still visualize that pair of boots sitting on the ground next to me, just like it was an hour ago. A couple days later, I had a chance to visit Bill in the hospital. He had lost his lower leg from about 4 inches below the knee. He had already been measured for a prosthetic. He was in good spirits and was really happy to be going home soon. I have continued to follow my guardian angel's advice, and it saved my life at least 6 times that I'm aware of. The last time involved 2 rockets being shot at me when working at night as perimeter driver, taking coffee out to the guys pulling guard duty in the towers and bunkers. Over the years, I've kept that advice in the forefront. There have been 6 or more astounding events that have happened in my life since then, all totally unique. The last just this past Sunday, the 9th of June, 2019. I believe it is time to tell these stories. Well, I guess you have some idea what direction this series of stories is going to go. If nothing else, there'll be food for thought. Believe me, I think about them quite often. All the best, folks. All the best.